At what point did you decide you were never going to be rich? Never going to be exceptional, but that was okay. By Ask Reddit.
I knew I wasn't going to be rich when I found the job I love. It's seasonal work, early spring to early winter, with chaotic hours. I find out my shift the day before I work it, usually working 8 to 15 hours, and lower pay, $13.50 an hour, but I'll be damned if I don't love it. I get paid to sit on my ass all day, reading books, and checking a sample every 15 minutes. My office is amazing, as I'm about 100 feet from the Mississippi River, and I don't deal with people. It's easy to get time off, my co-workers are super laid back, and my boss is fantastic. Nobody yells at me, I don't have any high expectations held to me. I adore the job, and it makes me very happy.
What is this job, if you don't mind me asking?
I inspect corn and beans all day, and sometimes look inside barges.
Don't look under the beans.
But under the beans is just more beans. The real scary POO is in the pits under the beans.
The real scary poo is in the pits under the beans. It's beans all the way down.
Nothing but beans. Sometimes a rat. Sometimes a dead rat. After a good rain it smells terrible.
It smells like wet beans, and a dead rat.
Wet beans smell worse than a dead rat.
Alright, Huckleberry thing.
I was about a 30-year-old chef. 50 now. Still love it, have a family. Work too hard for too little. Don't get to see them as much as I like, but if they need shoes or money for sports registration, I can provide.
Just posted this above, but I thought given your username you would appreciate, it is no bad thing to celebrate a simple life. J.R.R. Tolkien.
My life got a lot better and I became much happier when I embraced simplicity. Edit, I'm really happy this sparked such beautiful and positive thoughts and discussion. Spreading happiness is so much easier among the ranks than in the sergeant's tent.
I hear you. It isn't always easy, and I am by no means a pro at it. There are days when I lament that the opportunity to somehow greatly contribute to society has passed me by. But then I remember that quote, and that many small good things / acts of kindness can add up over the course of a simple life, and be remarkable in their own way.
Brew, that's sad. I hate that some people work really hard and still struggle.
Part of it is where we live. Expensive state, but my wife wants to be near her family. Plus, I don't know how to do anything else. There's people worse off than what we are.
I wanted to be a Jedi. Edit, still do.
Gooed. Twice the pride, double the fall. I don't think it's sad at all. He has a job he likes and he can provide for the people he loves. That's a beautiful life to me. I've decided it, but I'm still not okay with it. LOLTBH, I don't think I ever wanted to be loaded, just enough to not have to worry about going over my overdraft all the time. I'm more bothered by the fact that I've worked hard and studied to end up in a minimum wage job which bores the pants off me. But I have a roof over my head and a loving partner and family, so I'm still lucky.
What did you study?
I have masters in pizza making.
That's the problem. You should have gone for pizza baking, not making.
SMH, people actually think pizza making is a reputable career choice. This comment was sponsored by the Pizza Bakers Union.
I'm not certified to put pizza in the oven. You have to take that up with Tony.
Same here, minimum wage job, it's boring, but in my area it has a lot greater earning potential than more serious jobs due to overtime and overtime rates.
I don't know where you are, but if you're near a major, I mean, like, top 5 sort volume in the country major, FedEx ground hub and good with money, I highly recommend picking up a third shift job as a package handler. They pay weekly, normally you'll have tons of OT available. They pay $14 plus /hour, mine paid me $19, but I'm told I was at the highest compensated FedEx, Noki, and will bump pay on the weekends if they can't find enough weekend workers. If you're used to living on a minimum wage budget, you could probably build a lot of savings / work there for 6 months and take the rest of the year off. That said, it's hard work. I lost 40 lbs doing it, and I barely weighed over 200 lbs.
I'm basically in bumf nowhere of the UK. Minimum wage is perfectly livable here because there is low demand for housing etc. Very few well compensated jobs. The nearest city is actually worse for employment, standard of living etc.
I'd be fine with having the middle class life my parents had. What is difficult is wrapping my head around just that being so difficult to achieve.
My mom stayed at home, only my dad worked. We had a comfortable house with a yard and a pool, 2 cars, and my sister and I went to private school. My dad definitely had a good job but nothing extreme. My husband and I both work and we can't even afford a house. I feel like it will take me 10 to 15 more years to get to where my parents were at the age I am now.
At this point I'm just gonna prepare my body for the Thunderdome.
The Disneyfication of New York is over. At midnight, your Lexus is gonna turn into a pile of rats fighting over a human finger.
Have you looked around at other states? In California, $18 is still poo. Can barely afford rent and will never be able to own a house here. But in Texas or Arizona, my $18 an hour would be amazing. I could buy a house and have a good car. In theory, I don't even think my wife would have to work if she didn't want to. Here in California, that isn't an option.
5 years ago you'd have been right about Phoenix, but in the last couple of years the real estate prices here have exploded. Lots of Califugees and people coming with money from the PNW flocking here and buying in droves.
But in Texas or Arizona, my $18 an hour would be amazing. Currently in Texas, $18 probably puts you below poverty in Austin. You can live on it if you're frugal in San Antonio and possibly Houston. Not sure about El Paso, but Dallas probably has areas you could live in for that. Texas is eminently affordable if you like living in the equivalent of Barstow.
It's not you, it was definitely easier 50 years ago.
At least here in the US, wage stagnation, housing crisis, shrinkflation, this has been happening since the 80s. Edit, it's not your fault.
I feel like this is the first generation that almost universally can't afford to have offspring and live comfortably with typical middle-class jobs. I can't be the only 31-year-old, married person that still fears being crippled financially by a baby, can I?
I never thought I'd be rich when I grew up. I'm content enough with a simple, stable life.
Same here. I always strive to not be poor.
Yes, I want to be able to retire with enough money that I don't have to budget or scrimp on basic stuff like groceries, medications, or socks. If I can own a home and have a couple dogs, that'd be great. Maybe go on a vacation once a year. Simple. Of course I'd love to have a big house with secret passages, a big library, and a huge home theater in the basement, but that's just a bonus if I happen to do really well.
Same. I'm not ambitious at all despite working very hard in uni. I just want a stable job that allows me to provide for a family and be relatively comfortable financially. Nothing extravagant. I think partly it has to do with the fact that my generation grew up with the 2008 economic crisis and now COVID, so we're naturally not very optimistic about the future.
Exactly same here. I've worked hard my entire academic career, and have just landed a very average although stable job with progression options if I want them. I don't care about making 6 figures like so many people are obsessed with. I literally just want a comfortable enough home and enough money to afford bills with a little left over for the occasional treat. I don't want a fancy car or extravagant holidays. I don't get why many people don't think this is enough. There's so much pressure on being rich that I find myself wondering if I should want more.
I wouldn't mind being rich at all, screw the fancy cars and all that though. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy security and leisure. It can also buy the best damn medical care in the world.
Same. I was smart as a kid, in the top 1% of my year, and therefore smart enough to realize that I had choices. I chose to live a happy simple life over one with wealth and stress. No regrets. I was the top 1% too and ended up cooking meth and getting caught twice. I wish I had chosen the simple, meth-free life. Lots of regrets.
A meth-free life sounds like a promise made by a vacuum cleaner salesman with a lisp.
When I started taking antidepressants, I used to be so sad about my life and really suffering from gifted kid syndrome. Everyone told me I'd be something and I was struggling with self-hatred for not living up to that. Once I got my depression under control, I realized how comfortable I am with my life. I've got a job with good benefits and a respectable salary. I live in an apartment that's comfortable for me, not too huge, but not a showbox. I realized I don't want or need to make a ton of money, or live in a big house, or have a fancy car. Middle of the road is peaceful and fulfilling. Edit. Wow, the reception to this comment was huge. Thank you to everyone who replied with their similar stories. I hope you can all find this kind of peace in your journeys soon. Also, if you were a gifted kid that started struggling after high school, get tested for ADHD. If I had $1 for every gifted kid I knew who hit a wall after school and ended up diagnosed with ADHD, I could probably buy Reddit. Edit 2, because a lot of people have asked about my mental health journey, here's the basics. I was diagnosed with ADHD at a very early age, about a year after I was tested and labeled highly gifted, but my mother worked in health insurance at the time, and was seeing the adverse effects of very early medication used to treat it for kids. She made the executive decision not to tell me and just let me flit from interest to interest. As I mentioned, I was a gifted kid, and schooling came easy to me as long as it wasn't memorization. I killed the English game, but was poo at math when it came to formulas. I could tell you all about how weather works, but I couldn't tell you the terms. I either passed school by coasting easily, or being very good at cheating. Intelligence isn't always used wisely. In college it was harder, but I finally hit a wall due to the language requirement for graduating. Suddenly I had a mandatory course that I couldn't stop failing because none of my old methods worked and I could not effing learn it. It resulted in an eventual mental breakdown, but I was lucky that the student resources available connected me with the doctorate psychology program, and I was diagnosed through them for free. I was able to go on meds and get accommodations to get through the course. Of the people who I know that were labeled as gifted in grade school, a majority of them ended up having ADHD, or actually being on the autism spectrum. I'm sure there's studies on what that connection is, but it's true for too many people I know not to be something. When I was originally gifted tested, the psych looked at my mom and said good luck getting him to do anything he doesn't want to do, and that was before ADHD was even on her mind. As for the depression, I suffered from it starting when I turned 13 and hit it through grade school. In college I was self-medicating a lot, and aside from the language thing, in generally wasn't having too many issues. Once I got out of college I started to manifest symptoms of borderline personality disorder, which were explosive enough that I sought help. I enrolled in a mental health center, and during their intake they diagnosed me with depression and BPD, and started me on antidepressants and mood stabilizers. I originally was on Prozac, but even as we gradually increased my dose, I wasn't seeing an improvement in the main depression symptoms. Antidepressants aren't instant, so we gave it 2 months before trying a new med. We switched me to Lexapro, and a month in I started to notice improvement, so I've stayed on that since. I'm on Lamictal for the mood stabilizers and they worked great, so I've never had to alter that. Medications work differently for everyone. My roommate takes Prozac, and it works great for her. My best advice is to ask your potential mental health professional how they feel about trying different meds if one doesn't work. Any good one will say that's how it's done. Anyone who only prescribes one type of med tread with caution, and only use them if there's no other options.
I tell myself often that I'm living a life that most people in the world can only dream of: good health, a loving family, a safe house to live in, and good food in the table. It really is enough.
I was in Vietnam 4 years ago, almost to the day actually, and we went out into the Mekong Delta during Tet. Met with a bunch of people along the way, ended up eating with a family who invited us to their house. These people had very little. They had each other, a giant wild 13-foot Burmese python that they fed live chickens to, a 30-second walk to the river, and the plot of land they lived on where their ancestors were buried. They make them bury them there so that the family never sells the land, supposedly. That was it. Nothing more. They were all incredibly happy people, you could tell. Just living life. Not worried about which car they wanted next, or which phone they had versus their neighbor. They were a farming family and had a little plot of land. In that respect they were successful. We're conditioned in the Western world by capitalism. The constant barrage of Instagram, commercials, ads on bus benches, billboards, in video games, etc. We're conditioned to always want more. Spend, spend, spend. I realized during my time in Vietnam that none of that poo matters, it shouldn't affect your happiness, and that it was simply a device that we've been programmed by every day of our lives. I already knew that, but seeing other people with so much less than I have being so much happier was something that stuck with me.
Maybe the secret to their happiness was the 13-foot Burmese python?
The people next door with a 12-footer are so jealous. Trying to keep up with the Nguyen's.
To be fair, it was incredible.
Or the constant reminder that it could be worse, you could be the chicken.
Totally right. Most people in the world would say that's a privileged life. So you better enjoy it.
I was the top student in my class. I took all the advanced classes in high school, and set the curve on most tests. I had really high expectations for myself, and so did everyone else. My teachers told me that they thought I was going to be very successful. Honestly, it felt like someone had turned the difficulty slider for my life way down. Everything was working exactly as I wanted, and everything was easy. I knew which college I wanted to go to, and got which degree. I didn't even apply for any other university because I knew I would get in where I wanted. But they didn't have enough room on campus for me to stay, so I had to get an apartment. At the time, I thought that was awesome. Especially since it was a rule that all freshmen had to stay on campus. I loved the extra freedom that gave me. But I had to get a job to pay for my apartment, so I got a temp job at a local factory in the evenings, and went to class in the mornings. I should say tried to go to class. I was late to class almost every day. I couldn't handle going to school full-time, working full-time, and living alone for the first time. It was just too much. I went to my advisor and explained my situation, and he recommended that I drop out and look into online college. I didn't even go home and think about it. I went straight from his office to the dean's office and filled out the paperwork to drop out. I went home, cried, called my mom, cried some more, and then fell asleep. I felt worthless, like I had failed everyone that had ever believed in me. Over and over I kept telling myself that I would look back on that day with regret for the rest of my life. Luckily I was wrong. It's been almost 10 years since then, and I've managed to make a pretty good life for myself without a degree. Turns out, I'm really good at factory work, and I've managed to get 5 promotions since then, and now I make pretty decent money. I live well within my means, and I've managed to avoid getting into any debt besides my car and my house. I've invested a lot of my money over the years, investing, not day trading, so I didn't get in on the GME deal, and those investments have done quite well. I have a decent car, but nothing fancy. I've got a fairly small house, but it's more than enough for me. My income may not be as high as some of my classmates, I may not have as prestigious of a position as I could have had, but that's totally okay with me. I've worked to earn everything I have, and I have enough.
This is like the anti-Instagram /YouTube /LinkedIn post. Those are often people pretending to be happy, but there's something else behind the curtains. This is someone actually content, but not in a flashy or hyped up way. It's great.
That is honestly one of the best compliments I've ever received. I can't stand social media. Reddit doesn't count because it's anonymous, because I don't want to have to maintain any kind of public image. I hate trying to make other people think I'm happy. I would much rather just try to be happy. It's worked pretty well for me so far.
My income may not be as high as some of my classmates, and you don't have their student debt.
That's a very fulfilling life. I have a question though, and it comes from my similar situation. Do you find anything to be missing amongst the comfort? I'm in a similar position with a job that I'm somewhat interested in, decent salary, low expenses so I can save a good bit of money while still getting the toys I want. All that is nice, and obviously many people would love to have my situation, but I find myself kinda bored. There's no stress, no challenge, no impending event that I need to prepare for and think about. Under-challenged might be the word I'm looking for. Edit, after rereading this, it sounds kinda woe is me. I'm happy though. Just not where I wanna be, I think.
I can relate. I realized I didn't like being challenged in my workplace. It just added stress for career benefits I didn't care about, but I did find myself bored. I found picking up a new hobby helped a lot. I do cosplay and costuming, and I'm always learning about how to make bigger and better things. It gives me my fix of being challenged, as well as the accomplishment of learning and success. Plus I'm always prepping for some convention, which gives me a tangible timeline and goal to meet. There's a large variety of hobbies that can meet all those categories, so I always recommend poking around and seeing if something floats your boat, so to speak.
I'm a professor, and I was at an R1 university. There you are expected to write grants, and usually the professor opts to pay themselves out of the grant money for the things they are doing. Professors can get rich from this, especially in engineering, medicine, etc. It is how you become famous in your field. I hated it. I moved to a teaching-focused university. I like to be done when I go home at night. I like snowboarding and Lego. I am infinitely happier. Less money and fame, but who cares? Edit/note, the idea is that at an R1 the base salary after tenure is usually around $100,000. Add-on contracts, grants, speaking fees, etc. can double that. In most college towns in America, if you make anywhere near $200,000 you can pay your mortgage off in less than 10 years and you will never worry about money again. I mean normal person rich, not yacht rich.
An engineering professor who likes Lego. Color me surprised.
Why is Lego always autocorrected to be capitalized?
Because if it's lowercase you may not see it and step on it.
Android doesn't capitalize it. Lego. Watch your step.
Ow, I didn't see that last one. Damn it.
I thought it might be an acronym, but I was wrong. Not sure why it is capitalized, but Lego is an abbreviation of the two Danish words leg god, meaning play well.
GG God-legged.
Because that's how it's spelled. Lego is a brand, it's up to them to decide how to style it, and up to us to butcher it.
It's technically the proper way to spell it. Like Nintendo is not correct, it should be Nintendo. Lego decided it should be in all caps. Why?
Because the letters are blockier in all caps.
Next you'll be telling me they like Minecraft.
My 9-year-old son convinced me to pick up Minecraft over the quarantine Christmas break. Single dad, I switched to work from home and do 8 to 10 hours days, IT. Ended up pulling in the GF, then a couple other friends, and one of them has his GF playing. My son got bored and now we are a bunch of adults trying to get our kids to teach us. Minecraft is wild.
The research professor describes my dad perfectly. He was a bachelor until his first marriage at 43, and I was born when he was 45. My entire childhood, he would go to his university office on Saturdays because he wanted to make more progress on his research. I remember times when he would drive me home from school, cook dinner, put me to bed, and then go back to the university to check on a simulation program that he'd written. He had to present at a conference in London in early October 2001, so I remember being terrified that something bad was going to happen to his flight. Soon after 9/11, he only gave up his university office and stopped taking on new grants a couple years ago. His research partner, 10 years older than him, is still pursuing new grants and working like mad. It's a certain kind of passion, but a lonely one.
It's really cruel for women who want families. By the time they get tenure they are in their mid-30s, which makes it harder to get pregnant. You don't want a newborn in grad school when you make $20K, and you don't want a newborn when you are trying to get tenure either.
Agreed, though that can honestly be said of almost any career path a woman chooses. If you have a kid in your 20s, you don't get the foundational experience, and are 10 years behind. If you have a kid in your early 30s, you miss the time when your career would be snowballing to launch you to a higher level, or you're not taken seriously enough to be considered for the advancement. If you have a kid in your late 30s or 40s, it's biologically more difficult to get and stay pregnant. And you still need to devote a lot of time to the career you just invested 15 to 20 years into. I'll be curious to see if this changes with more remote work. Will not seeing the baby bump lead employers to treat pregnant women more like men in advancement decisions?
One of my lab mates in grad school got to hear the professor in the office next door to his, not our professor, yelling at his pregnant grad student to get an abortion or drop out.
Prof didn't want to pay child support.
It's true, and it has happened to someone I know.
My friend's PhD advisor had her baby and was writing grant proposals in the hospital the day after the baby was born. She was crazy, but she also had every aspect of her life planned out, and she wasn't gonna miss out on anything.
Academia was almost the death of me, one of the most stressful jobs out there and not nearly worth it money-wise.
Not nearly worth it money-wise. This makes me appreciate many of the professors I had so much more. They did a hell of a job, and it's not a job where you can clock out after 8 hours. Or have weekends / holiday breaks that are entirely free. Many of them had families, and a couple had ridiculous commutes. And none of them make anywhere near what they're worth. But they keep doing it, because they clearly like what they do. If it didn't require grad school, I'd totally do it. Some of the research that the engineering professors did was kinda like a hobby to them, just with a much bigger budget.
This is precisely why I left academia after my master's instead of going on. I quickly realized it's not the kind of job that you leave when you leave the office. My mind was always occupied by it, and it was exhausting and not worth it. Some people love it. I found it to be a miserable hamster wheel experience, and I was still living the cushy grad student life, meaning I hadn't been put through the torture of trying to find a job. I know people who did go on to get their PhDs who are now living apart from their spouses because the only jobs they could find were across the country, moving constantly, etc. No thanks.
My father warned me of the perils of academia, and this was back in the late 80s, so I can only imagine what it's like now.
Exactly why I'm happy being a staff scientist.
What are these academic grants you are referring to where you can pay yourself above your grade out of the grant? Everywhere I have been, there is a chart that dictates that if you pay yourself out of the grant, it has to be according to a government-mandated salary chart. And you pay yourself in lieu of the university, to release yourself from some of your duties. I know my experiences are not universal, but could you provide some context for this?
There are limits on how much you can pay yourself for a grant. But you can be on multiple grants, especially if you're working as a consultant. To make more money, Some academics will set up a private consulting business and get put on grants through that, but it can get messy if they start using university resources, for example, student labor, to do that private work. I don't know all the ins and outs, but grant writing can make an academic stupidly rich. If I'm not mistaken, being a successful grant writer can give you some solid bargaining power with the university, because they get indirect costs from your grants, which could lead to a much higher base salary.
Late teens is when I knew I would never been rich. As a child I was certain I'd never be exceptional. I was never ever okay with it. Now I'm 41 and have more than I could ever imagine. It's really funny how things work out.
Too bad I have very good imagination.
Ha. Same here.
Same with me. I'm 44 and as a kid with a learning disability, which was probably I never thought I'd own a house, have a family or any sort of decent employment. I'm not rich but I'm way better off than I thought I'd be.
ADHD, probably mild autism. I have a secure job as a teacher. I'm not amazing, and sometimes it's a grind, but I have a lot of flexibility and my school puts 11,000 into retirement every year. I get a new computer every 3 years. I can take a day off to go hiking if I make it up on a Saturday if I want. I retire in 10 to 13 years but will probably move to a country with a low cost of living because I don't know if I'll have quite enough otherwise.
Holy poo. $11k a year into savings alone is worth it, lol. I make $16k /year, so that's unimaginable to have that much in savings. When I was a kid, I was born poor, grew up poor, saw how damned difficult it was to just go from poor to not poor, much less from poor to rich.
Same here. It taught me that you don't need to be rich and that vast wealth is a waste of money.
I was born poor too. I'm so sick of the, do we pay rent or the car loan or food plus heat, life. Happiness rises with income up to about $80,000-ish for the household, location relative. Which is about the point of financial stability. That there I think is my personal goal. I don't want to be rich, but I've always dreamt about what it'd be like to have enough.
This hits way too close to home. I'm almost 20 and I've been homeless countless times. Currently living at my friend's parents' house who make about $80k a year, and while they are not rich per se, they are not struggling. And it's given me a new meaning to living comfortable.
It's good. I'm only 25 and I make more than my parents combined my whole childhood as a almost journeyman electrician. In a few months I pass the test and get like a 50% pay raise. I'm so excited to save any money at all. It's so weird. When I first moved out of home and realized that my bachelor's degree doesn't mean poo, because I'm now living like people who've never went to college in their lives.
I barely made it through college and I make 3 times as much as my brother with 2 PhDs, and I was making more than my PhD father ever made by 30. Education does not equate wealth. Neither does hard work. I worked 10 times harder and people had much higher expectations when I was making minimum wage than when I was making $100k.
I mean, doing a PhD is basically a conscious choice to sacrifice your earnings potential in order to do something beneficial for humanity. Everyone goes in knowing that it's not a financial investment.
I just wish we made it easier for people to do this. Imagine the scientific and cultural achievements we are missing out on because people don't opt into academia. Those who do tend to come from relatively wealthier backgrounds where they can afford to move to the other side of the world to study.
I'd love to be able to quit my job and do a master's and a PhD. But that's 6 to 8 years of earning potential it would be hard to let go of.
Depending on your field, a master's will pay you to go to school, and your earning potential is much higher. In my field it absolutely made financial sense. PhD is of varying results.
Most people doing a PhD don't have to move to the other side of the world to study. There are world-class research institutions in every hemisphere. Also, even in the US it doesn't cost any money to do a PhD in most cases, although if you already have a family it can be difficult to live on a TA's salary.
Depends on the field. That's certainly true for most people who invest heavily into education for the arts and humanities. It's far less true for the hard sciences, where even a PhD in math or physics will likely get you a comfortable life, and a heavily applicable degree like chemistry puts you into the middle class straight out of school and may make you rich.
My parents both have PhDs in sciences, mom microbiology, dad human-computer interactions. They're both full professors at a university. My mom has her own lab, and they both make six figures, and love their work. I think PhDs in hard sciences are worthwhile if you want to do research and do it in something you're truly passionate about. Being a researcher is a huge time commitment though. Salary pay so hours are flexible but they work all the time. If you like the work though, it's worth it.
I see this a lot on Reddit, and I am just gonna throw it out there for any potential college-bound grads. Downvote if you want, but if you disagree you are wrong. End of discussion. This isn't true for everyone. There are tons of profitable degrees, think STEM, but many outside of STEM too. Don't let posts like these discourage you. But also know you can make a great living without any degrees too.
I work with dogs for a living. I make enough to pay my bills, but I'll never be rich. I'll never own a home of my own without roommates. One of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that people often POO on me for having a menial job. They basically call it a cop-out. It's too easy, I'll always be poor, why don't I find something better? But I wake up every morning not dreading going to work. I don't fantasize about strangling my boss because she's flipping awesome. I don't come home completely stressed out and hating life because I'm stuck at a job that I hate with people who annoy the hell out of me. A bad day with a dog is still better than the best day with humans. It must be nice to go to work at 10 and be home by 3, my roommate regularly scoffs. You're right. It is nice. And my rent is paid, so to enjoy your 8 to 5, buddy. Winking face edit, thank you so much for all the awards. For some more context, I am a pet care provider. Dog walking and pet sitting are our primary functions, but we offer other services such as basic training, administering medications, and transportation for vet/grooming appointments. I pay for my own health insurance, and I'm covered under the company insurance if I'm injured on the job. I do put money away into savings for my future, and I am blessed with an awesome cousin who is going in on a small home with me once we have enough for a down payment. I greatly appreciate the sweet comments and reading your stories of choosing happiness with whatever career you pursue. As for the rude comments and DMS, well, I'm sorry my life choices offend you, and I hope your weekend is as delightful as you are. Heavy black heart.
Know someone just like you who inspired me to get a tiny house. She got a second job for 3 years. Just long enough to get the deposit for the tiny house of her dreams. What she pays for the loan and to park in an RV park, which includes electric /water /Wi-Fi, is the same she was paying for her part of the rent and utilities for a shared apartment. She'll have the tiny house paid off in 7 years and it will be hers forever. She said those 3 years sucked, but now she owns her own roof and is back to working as a dog trainer /walker 20 to 30 hours a week. She loves her life.
This is probably the nicest thing I've read all week. You don't need to be loaded or successful by societal standards to be happy. And I'm realizing more and more as the day goes by that being happy is all that even matters. Thank you for sharing.
She's legitimately the happiest person I know. She speaks 5 languages and is learning a 6th. Plays the piano and guitar and is learning the violin. Takes tons of camping trips with her 2 dogs. Lives on $900 a month, is debt-free besides her tiny house, and puts $500 a month in a Roth IRA. She says she'd rather be happy than wealthy.
We were talking about people on earth, not life in heaven. Please reread the question.
LOL.
This is incredible. I'd be lying if I said that this isn't what my aspiration is. I'm just worried I'll get caught up in the rat race. There are so many things I want to pursue that I couldn't as a kid, playing instruments apart from the piano being a big one, and this just makes me so hopeful. Thank you so much again for sharing.
Don't forget that working part-time is an option. You can work full-time for a while to establish yourself, then change to part-time.
I'm in my first year of the rat race. I make good money for a new grad and I do not plan on staying. I don't hate it by any means, but I don't spend my days off wanting to get back to it. Do what's necessary for a time and keep your true goals in mind and what you need to be comfortable.
As a matter of fact, as long as your basic needs are met, your happiness is solely up to you, and no amount of money will change that. This is called the hedonic treadmill. If you're unhappy at $80K a year, and you get to $120K, you might feel superficially good for a little while, with your better house and new toys, but then you'll get used to it and feel just like you did when you were at $80. Rinse, repeat.
I've been looking into tiny houses a lot lately and it seems like people are having trouble finding places to legally put them. If you don't mind me asking, what state is your friend in?
We are both in Texas. I live in an actual tiny house village right in the middle of a city. There are plans for 3 more. She lives in an RV park farther out in the country. There are several tiny houses in her RV park. It doesn't seem to be a problem in the south to find anywhere to park.
This reminded me of the time I was working as a cleaner. Happened often when people would ask what I do for a living. When I answered, it felt like they were either looking me down or felt sorry for me. I was and still am proud that I used to be a cleaner. It's not an easy job.
Wait, why is your roommate talking poo about your financials when you live in the same damn apartment? /he clearly isn't rolling in it either.
Right. I wonder if they're dogging on, get it? Opcause. Ops not putting as much into savings as they are. Honestly, the only thing I could think of other than rank envy. I'm in the same boat. I work in an animal shelter. The pay is crap, but I benefit from the fulfillment it brings. I'm the kind of person that gets depressed if I feel my daily work is meaningless, so the feeling that I'm making a difference for animals and people is worth it. Though if anybody calls working with animals easy, all of the bruises, bites, scratches and emotional scars I and my co-workers have sustained would like to say otherwise.
I wish I could do what you are doing. I had a recent chat with my manager who asked what I'd be doing if I wasn't a programmer. I said I'd be working in an animal shelter looking after them. He was taken aback by it for some reason. I explained I'm only following my current career because it pays well and I have zero interest in the finance sector otherwise. I said that if money was never a problem, I'm sure we'd all be doing jobs that bring us joy and meaning.
There's more to life than money. I'm 39 and I've just come to realize I'd rather have an easy life than be stressed beyond belief because I'm thinking about work all the time. Keep living the dream for as long as you can.
I've said it 100 times if I've said it once. Peace of mind is so undervalued in this country.
To be fair, looking at the other side, a lot of people with menial jobs do have the disadvantages you listed anyway, like hating their bosses or not enjoying what they do.
I have 2 degrees and my generation everywhere wants 5 years experience, so finding jobs is rough. I work at a dog hotel. It's amazing. I get the regulars who I get to bond with and learn their personalities, which yes, dogs do have personalities or dogalities. As well as getting to meet new dogs most days. Sure, I have been bitten before. Sure, I have to work nights most nights as well as working 8-hour shifts. Sure, cleaning up puke and poo can be gross. Sure, during an ice storm we can't just call off work because the dogs are there needing someone. But at the end of the day it's still less stressful than any other job I have had, and the costumers never bitch at you unless you don't feed them. Even then they aren't anywhere near the assholes humans can be. I hope to put my degrees to good use. They both are perfect for today's society. But if we get $15 minimum wage, I could see myself doing this for a while. Hated office work. Love being outside with dogs all day. Worst job I ever had was working beside a judge in a courtroom. Stressful as F. You mess up or hold things up, you have the judge, lawyers, sheriffs, entire room full of people who honestly dread being there, all pissed at you because you held things up. F that job.
I'm a recent college graduate who used to have huge aspirational dreams, but I think I'm quite content with a menial job, if that means I can pay for what I need to pay for and live my life how I want to.
I've always longed for the 8 to 5 office job. I currently work a simple job. It pays middle-class pay and forces a lot of overtime. I don't hate it, but I am often quite tired and I'd rather not be working in the rain or the heat. I enjoy the frigid temps, but it never gets too extreme in my area. So I am longing for that 8 to 5 office job. I feel like I'd rather be bored inside than soaking wet. If it will happen though. I'm working on a comp sci degree and I hope I achieve my simple goals. May I ask, what's the beef with office jobs? Or did you mean just any 8 to 5 job?
Are you happy? Yes. Then you've got a good life. Life is about being good enough to be happy.
For real, man. The masochistic F-ed up mentality of I kill myself at work all day so join me or you're a lazy F is ridiculous.
I volunteer at a food bank relatively frequently. The women who work there are very sweet, but they don't get paid very well. My mom told me you'd better get into a good college or you might turn out like one of them. What do you mean? Turn out happy. Help people for a living. Make enough to support myself while having free time to do what I want.
Joke's on her, you can still go to a good college and not get paid very well. This was the lie they told to us millennials, go to college to get a good job. It doesn't work like that anymore.
I'll be devil's advocate for a second, and this is a question for anyone who has that awesome job you're happy at but pays just enough for you to live. What are your plans when you reach the age that you can't work with dogs anymore, mentally or physically? Just want to know if this is something you have a plan for, because I would love to do something like you, but the thought of getting old and not having something in place is a terrifying thought.
This is an undervalued question. In the US, at least, you better have some plan for when you cannot work anymore. Other places have a functioning retirement system in place for normal retirement, but even places that have a good retirement system do not necessarily have their ducks in a row for people that become profoundly disabled near or at retirement but not near to death. It's a conversation worth having with oneself, especially if you pursue the kind of lifestyle being described idyllically in these posts.
Thank you. Bootstrapism and this I work 80 hours a week needs to die culturally. Let people live again.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.